Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coasts of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast, and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grieved, vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But she answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. And she said, Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour.
All right, so this morning we're going to look at healing a daughter that had an unclean spirit. And as Jacob just read for us, Matthew 15, 21 through 28. But it also appears in Mark 7, verses 24 through 30. So just to get our bearings here, I've got a map which shows the area where Jesus was. You see up about 2/3 of the way up, you see the Sea of Galilee. And we know from our reading that Jesus spent time in towns around the Sea of Galilee. And in this reading, or this portion of this chapter, has him go up from the Sea of Galilee up to Tyre and Sidon, which is in the upper left-hand area on the coast there. Now it's not entirely clear from the reading what route Jesus took. Sometime later on, it talks about the mountain of Lebanon, range of Lebanon, I think. So it's not clear whether Jesus went up, and the disciples went up over, the top of that mountain there, the range that's right above the word Galilee, or down below it. But the Mount of Lebanon is up near the A, Phoenicia. So just to give you some bearings of where he was going. So first, let's take a look at comparing the two readings that this appears in. The first one is what Jacob read for us, Matthew 15. And then we've got Mark. So let's just take a look at that. There's a few differences and we can compare them. First we have, it says, From thence he arose and went to the borders of Tyre and Sidon, and entered into a house, and would have no man know it, but he could not be hid. So we know that the knowledge of Jesus, a lot of people knew about him through his preaching around the Sea of Galilee, through the miracles that he had done. And even though he had departed there to get away from the masses and head north and spend some time, I guess, it doesn't say exactly why he went up there other than to get away from that. If his intention was then to preach to the folks up there, but it does say that he for at least a portion of that time, he went into a house, and it's not clear whether it's like an inn or a private home, but he wanted some privacy. But because of what he had done, because of the knowledge of him, that wasn't going to happen. People were aware of him, and we see later on that this woman sought him out. So, moving on to verse 25 of Mark, a certain woman, it doesn't give us the detail of her that Matthew did, which tells us she's a woman of Canaan. But it does tell her that her daughter, whose young daughter, had an unclean spirit. In Matthew, it says a devil. Yes, it says vexed with a devil. So she had an unclean spirit, and in Scripture, of course, an unclean spirit or vexed with a devil can refer to either someone who has some kind of physical ailment or some kind of mental ailment. It's not clear from any of this what she was suffering from, other than that she was sick. She had some kind of severe disease. So this certain woman, she heard that Jesus and the disciples were there, and she sought him out. And we're told she came and fell at his feet. So here is Jesus. She comes up. We can see from Matthew and verse 23 that the disciples were not, they tried to get rid of her. Matthew 10, I believe, 10, we can see at verse 10 and, chapter 10 and verse 5, that the disciples and Jesus, they were both focused on finding the nation of Israel. And so knowing this woman was a Canaanite, they really brushed her off. So Matthew 10 and verse 5 says, "These 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So she comes in, falls down at Jesus' feet, asking his assistance, asking him to heal her daughter. And we're looking over at Matthew 23, but he answered her not a word. He didn't respond at all to her in any way. The disciples came over, asking him to send her away, for she crieth after us. So to them, she must have been creating quite a commotion. She was upsetting them in some way, and they asked Jesus to send her off. Of course, he would not. She got his attention. We're told in Mark 20, verse 26 of Mark, that the woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician by nation, and she besought him that he would cast forth the devil out of her daughter. So whether she was yelling or just very persistent, she was making the disciples uncomfortable, and they wanted her gone. Although Christ did not answer her at first, he did turn, and at that point, he did answer her, explaining to her, "I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel," reiterating what we had just read. At that, the woman, we see in verse 25 here of Matthew, the woman came and worshipped him again. So she was already in Mark, at the end of Mark 20, verse 25, she fell at his feet. So then again, there she is, after he's spoken to her, She then is bowed down. She's humbled herself before him, showing her humility and her great desire for his help. So moving on, Christ says in Mark, he says, "Let the children first be filled. For it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it unto the dogs." In Matthew, it's a briefer exchange. In a few minutes, we'll look at what it meant at that point in time to be a dog, what exactly that phrase meant, and I believe another brother spent some time in one of his classes going into this in quite a bit of detail. Needless to say that Christ's use of the word dogs here wasn't a compliment to her. It was a characterization of what the Gentiles were, or those that are not of the nation of Israel. But the woman doesn't show that upset her. She doesn't turn and go away. There's no indication that she was upset by that. She was still persistent. She was still certain that she would get his help healing her daughter. And she answers, say unto him, "Yes, Lord, yet the dogs under the table eat of the children's crumbs." Which, of course, as we know, that's what got Christ's attention and turned his attitude to actually helping her. It was clear that she was humble. She understood what he was saying. And Christ then says, "For this saying, go thy way, the devil is gone out of thy daughter." So he, in the end, heals her. She convinces him that her faith is such that she's worthy of his help. Any questions or comments at this point? Okay, so let's move on and take a few minutes and look at dogs. So the word dogs appears many, many times in Scripture. It most often has a negative connotation to it. In the instances I saw, there were a few where it's sort of neutral, referring to dogs, but there's never, from what I could find, any positive reference to it. Most often, it's a negative reference. So the first instance that we're going to look at, and like I said, there are many of them, and I just picked out a few examples. In Exodus 22 and verse 31. Now this is a section of Exodus where it's going through a variety of laws and various ordinances. This one in particular is about not eating unclean meat. And it reads, "And ye shall be holy men unto me, neither shall ye eat any flesh that is torn of beasts of in the field. Ye shall cast it to the dogs." So it's meat that's unsuitable for men's consumptions, but it's fine for the dogs. Get rid of it and give it to a dog. The next one, 1 Samuel chapter 17. I'm sure everybody recognizes this. This is the scene of David and Goliath. And in this section, this is Goliath saying rhetorically to David, he's asking David if David thinks that Goliath is a dog. And it reads, And the Philistine came on, and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Staves are sticks, could be a rod or a staff that is used. So something that you might shoo a dog away with. So Goliath was not pleased, and again invokes dog as a negative connotation. 2 Samuel 16 and 9. This is where, again, somebody is cursing David. In this case, it's Shimei. Shimei is extremely upset. He's yelling. He's throwing things at David. And he's cursing David. And it reads, I just have a snippet up there on the screen, but in full, starting at verse 7, it says, And thus said Shimei when he cursed, come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned. And the Lord hath delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom thy son. And behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. Then said Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, unto the king, Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. Another negative connotation. All right, moving on. I've got a couple of more. Psalm 22. So here we have a psalm where David is in great distress. He's very upset, praying to God. And he says, beginning at verse 11, Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. Many bulls have compassed me, strong bulls of Bashan have beset around me. They gaped upon me with their mouths as ravening and a roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. And thou hast brought me into the dust of death, for dogs have compassed me. And then he repeats again, he reiterates it in different language, The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. Nice Bible echo to Christ. So here he's comparing dogs have surrounded him. They're all around him. And then he recharacterizes it as an assembly of the wicked. So we know what David thinks of dogs. We have Proverbs 26. And this one is pretty straightforward. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. So, not much to add there. It's pretty clear. Isaiah 56 and verses 9 through 11. Starting at verse 9, All ye beasts of the field, come to devour, yea, all ye beasts in the forest. His watchmen are blind. They are ignorant. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark. Sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. So they're lazy. Yea, they are greedy dogs, which can never have enough, and they are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look their own way, every one for his gain and from his quarter. So at first, they're described as analogous to watchmen that are blind. They can't see what's happening. They're ignorant. They don't know anything. They're dumb dogs. And then invoking the greediness of dogs, they can't ever have enough. Okay, and then finally, at the end of the Bible here, we have the invocation of dogs in terms of those that are accepted and those that are rejected. Revelation 22 reads, starting at verse 14, says, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city." So, of course, those that are pleasing unto God, and they are entering into the city. Then we see in verse 15, "For without," these are the rejected, "they're dogs. Sorcerers, whoremongers, murderers, idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie." So again, dogs appear many times in Scripture, always a very negative connotation. So I've got a little bit of material from Brother Roberts. And what he helps us understand this passage a little bit better, and also something about dogs. So, somewhat wearied with his prolonged and contentious intercourse with the people and their leaders, Jesus now planned a little retirement for a season. He left the scenes of his activity in the neighborhood of the Sea of Galilee to seek repose by the quiet Mediterranean seaboard on the borders of Tyre and Sidon, which is about 50 miles to the north and west. His road thither with his disciples would be through the most picturesque country on the face of the earth. The towering snow-capped heights of the Lebanon range in the distance to the right would be a constant feature throughout the journey, and the road would wind tortuously through a labyrinth of hills and valleys for miles till it opened out on the left upon the plain country reaching down to the sea near Tyre and Sidon. Doubtless the quietness of the walk would be very acceptable to the Lord after the busy time he had had. It would take 3 or 4 days to make the distance on foot, and it was nearly always on foot that these journeys were made. Arriving near Tyre and Sidon, he entered into a house and would have no man know it. Those who have had any considerable experience of public work can enter into this touching incident, disposed to bless, yet needing repose after a time of incessant activity, and knowing on the whole futility of much of the work done among a population, the mass of which could rise no higher than loaves and fishes. It reveals a picture true to the life in showing us Jesus trying to conceal himself in a house to which he had retired for rest. It would be interesting to know what measures he took to suppress the fact of his presence. He would probably say quietly to the disciples, "Don't let it be known that I am here." He drew from the fame of him that had gone abroad, that if it were known, the people would come, and that was just what he did not want at this time. It is interesting to note that he worked no miracle to prevent the people knowing. He could have done so. The fact that he did not is one of many illustrations that the miraculous power of God had given him. It was not exercised for private ends or works of convenience, but only when public need called for it, as an attestation of the reality of his mission from God. Whatever steps he took to hide the fact of his presence, they were not quite successful. One day, when they were out on a quiet walk, a Greek woman, having a sick daughter at home and learning in some way that this company of men walking along the road was Jesus and his disciples, followed after them at some distance, calling out, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou Son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a demon." Jesus took no notice for a while. He answered her not a word. The woman kept on calling, walking after them at about the same pace. Jesus appears to have walked in advance of the rest, and the disciples, who were annoyed with the woman's persistent entreaties, made up to him and asked him to grant the woman's request and send the woman away, for she took no notice of their deprecatory gestures. Jesus said to them, "I am not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." This woman did not belong to the house of Israel, therefore he seemed to imply that she was outside the channel of his attention. This is a great stumbling block to those who believe in human immortality. It is one of the features of Christ's life which says he does not, which Mr. Gladstone says he does not understand, on which Orthodox commentators put a strained and artificial construction, suggesting that Christ said what he said to try the faith of his disciples, or the faith of the woman. The simple fact is what he stated about this woman had no claim on his attention. His mission was to the house of Israel, outside of God's plan, with whom the world of sinners was so much grass of the earth, growing up and passing away, filling but an evanescent part of the scheme of things. He therefore stated the simple truth when declining to attend to her. He said, "I am not come but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." While he and the disciples were thus in conference, the woman, with the irrepressible eagerness of a mother seeking her daughter's benefit, pushed herself right before Christ and prostrated herself, beseeching him that he would cast the demon out of her daughter. "Lord, help me," she said. There was an embarrassing situation. Jesus had declined the request of the disciples. Here was the woman herself before him with her importunities. His true and graceful adroitness never failed him. He could not be harsh, but he did not retreat from the position of truth he had taken up. He said to the woman, in another form, what he had said to the disciples. "It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs." Her perfectly humble and opposite rejoinder left Jesus no alternative but to grant her request. "Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs that fall from the master's table." This removed the objection that lay in the way. Jesus, who had strictly forbidden his disciples in their separate tours to go into the way of the Gentiles, would naturally feel that his compliance with this woman's request, apart from a recognition of their mutual positions, would be in collision with his own instruction, and lay his position open to misunderstanding. But when the woman acknowledged herself a dog and asked only a crumb, Jesus had no scruples. "O woman, great is thy faith. For this saying, go thy way, be it unto thee even as thou wilt." Away the woman went. This was the whole extent of her desire, a creature benefit, and she got it. When she was come to her house, she found the demon gone, and her daughter laid upon the bed. And I have one more piece here from Brother Carter explaining a little bit more about the background of dogs. The woman came near and worshipped him, contenting herself with the imploring words, "Lord, help me." Jesus then answered, "It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs." The refusal has severity, but not all the harshness of the AV. It does repeat, but yet in a form that could not have been pleasing to the woman. The answer Jesus had given to the disciples. The children must be fed, first be filled, as we see in Mark, and it was not fitting their food should be given to dogs. Israelites were analogous to children, Gentiles were dogs. Two things relieve the harshness. The word first, in Mark's account, implying a possible later place for Gentiles, and the word dog is diminutive, which might be better understood as doggies or puppies, and has a touch of playfulness seen in our slang of the use of kiddies or kiddos or kids. While then, dog is without question a term of contempt, as in the phrases dog of an infidel or dog of a Jew, the word puppy has not the same offensiveness. The woman accepted the distinction and found it an opening for a further appeal. The attitude of Jesus was not that of his disciples, and his look would have sympathy. She rejoined, "Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table." The answer sprang from a persistency in which, sharpened by love of her daughter, but was also based on recognition that the teacher was of royal descent, and perhaps even more than that. For she called him Lord in addition to calling him the Son of David. It was a case where a Gentile saw further than the Jews, where a Gentile recognized Jewish privilege, but saw that some fragment of mercy could come to Gentiles. With such faith revealed, Jesus acknowledged it. "O woman, great is thy faith," and granted her request. That's all I have. Any questions, comments?